have to remember that if our lower back is engaging, our lower abs aren't getting the work that we want them to, and therefore we're not fully benefiting from the movement. Hey guys, it's Corey from Redefining Strength, and today I want to talk about lower ab training mistakes and how to avoid them. If you always feel your lower back during things like double leg lowers or leg flutters or hanging abs, your lower abs aren't working the way they should be. You're not getting the full benefit of the movements. So I want to talk about how you can avoid your lower back compensating during these exercises and actually get your abs engaged and working. Now, you've probably heard people say that lower abs don't exist. You don't have lower ab muscles, and that with all core work, you actually work your entire core. And this is true. Your entire abdominal region does work with any ab exercise, but you can target that lower portion to a greater extent with specific movements, things like the pelvic tilt progression and hanging abs. But I want to talk about how you can actually get more out of these movements because our lower back does tend to compensate. If you've ever struggled with your lower back engaging during things like double leg lowers, you might have used the band-aid of placing your hands behind your lower back. And while this might help prevent your lower back from engaging during the exercise so you can push through, it's not teaching you to actually properly engage your abs during this exercise. You're not regressing to progress to build up the strength to properly use this movement. So I want to guide you through the entire posterior pelvic tilt progression so you can properly engage and work your lower abs. Because if your lower back is constantly compensating, you're not getting the benefit of this movement. Another key thing to remember with things like double leg lowers or even hanging abs is that it's easy to let our hip flexors compensate and take over. If you've ever done a hanging ab exercise and simply bent your knees up, you're working your hip flexors more than you're working your abs. The posterior pelvic tilt and spinal flexion is really key if you want to make sure you actually work your abs during the exercises and don't just use your hip flexors. Because anytime we have hip flexion, we have to remember that our hip flexors and our quads will engage and work. During things like hanging abs, you want to think about actually rounding through your spine. A great way to regress movements like the knees to elbows is to do the hanging posterior pelvic tilt. You're simply going to round your lower back to tilt your pelvis. From here, you can actually then think about doing bicycles or even knees to elbows, but you want to think about first tilting that pelvis and almost creating an angle with your body before you tuck. Using spinal flexion to bring your knees up to your elbows or even touch your toes to the bar is a great way to make sure your abs are working and you're actually targeting those lower abs during the exercise. You don't want to just use your hip flexors or feel your lower back. Same thing goes for that double leg lower off the ground. You need to build up by learning how to use the posterior pelvic tilt. When you set up, you want to think about pressing your lower back into the ground. You might simply even start with a hold here. Once you've mastered being able to press your lower back into the ground and engage your abs, you can then do a single knee tuck. After that, you can actually tuck both knees in. From here, you can do a straight leg, single leg lower, or even build up to that double leg lower. You want to make sure that you're actually bracing your abs to protect your lower back and that your lower back isn't coming off the ground. If you feel your lower back start to engage, modify the movement. Sometimes we have to regress to progress, especially as we fatigue. We have to remember that if our lower back is engaging, our lower abs aren't getting the work that we want them to, and therefore we're not fully benefiting from the movement. Once you've mastered the double leg lower, you can even go into things like leg flutters or leg crisscross or even a lower ab plank hold. While you will feel your hip flexors working with any sort of hip flexion, you want your abs to be working to stabilize that spine. Just remember we have to earn any exercise we include. You want to regress to progress and go back to those basic variations of either the hanging abs or that posterior pelvic tilt to build up. This way you'll actually work your lower abs more and get more benefit than if you just do a harder variation and feel your lower back compensate. If you liked the video, make sure to like it, comment below if you have any questions, and subscribe. We're posting new videos each week.